Okay, it's 4:30. I'm going to call this District of Tofino Committee the whole meeting to order on the 15th of March 2021. First of all, I acknowledge that the District of Tofino operates within the territory of the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, and as a notice to attendees that the meeting is being video recorded and will be published on the District of Tofino's YouTube channel. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda, please? Chalmers and Anderson. All those in favour? None opposed. Motion is carried. I'll move from the chair that the minutes of the committee, the whole meeting held February 1, 2021 be adopted. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Chalmers. Any discussion? All those in favour? None opposed. Motion is carried. Any public comment, Elise?
Yes, through the chair. Eileen Floody has signed up to speak to item 7 on the agenda. So Eileen, I'm going to unmute you and allow you to speak for up to 2 minutes.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can, Eileen. Go ahead.
Okay, just a few quick points because you've heard me before on this topic. I'm glad to see that Main Street is the recommended option. I do think the standard design provided by VIRL is really ugly. I'd like to see an internal layout of the design as well. You probably know that the CIO, Rosemary Bonanno, is retiring in September. Possibly her successor would be more flexible and open to a longer time frame for this project. Let's at least add a multi-purpose room to the building that could be accessed separately to be used by the community. This could be rent revenue and another recreation space for the district. Currently, the library is open Wednesday to Saturday for a total of 16 hours. Let's ask for more hours. That's very few. And last thing, the offer of volunteers to look after the Katie Monk's garden is still open. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. Is any more?
No, through the chair, that's it.
Okay, we have no delegations, so we're moving on to the discussion of Tofino Library. Over to the presentation from the CAO.
Good afternoon, Council, or committee, I guess more accurately. Want to, a topic we're all familiar with, and just want to walk Council through some of the thoughts that are in the staff report that you've all seen by now, and some of, to maybe get some discussion going about the 2 recommendations that are in front of Council this afternoon. So, and sorry, I'm just trying to click to the next slide here. There we go. So just a bit of, and that's my phone, there's nothing I can do about it. A bit of a brief background, look at some of the locations that have been considered, look at, and with the recommendation the Council's aware of, look at the VIRL prototype, and I expect there'll be some discussion on that. Talk about next steps, and then we'll have the recommendation, of course, in front of Council for consideration and discussion. So I think it's no secret that the library that we have in Tofino now is undersized, and it has suffers from lack of secure long-term tenure. It's in the basement of the Royal Canadian Legion Tofino branch. The minimum size for a library in the VIRL system, a new library, is 2,750 square feet. And as populations are larger, they look at building libraries to 0.6 square feet per community member, essentially. Through the process, we've looked at a number of sites, and this started in 2016, but the community hall site. We looked at the municipal hall parking lot locations, 2 different locations, actually where the so-called RV parking as well as the gravel behind us. And in 2017, council gave direction to proceed with planning on the gravel parking lot, the Main Street parking lot. In late last year, I brought the idea of locating the library in Katie Monk's Park, across from Commonwealth Bakery. And through the process, we've had feedback on all of these locations. And the feedback specifically that came last year after the idea of Katie Monk's Park was floated is attached as an appendix to the staff report. We did, starting in 2017 through 2019, look at could we have a partnership between the CBT and the library, with the district being, a third partner, as at least as landowner and possibly as someone that would have some space. I think a lot of good ideas, and there were really some natural synergies. However, the partnership kind of failed at the business side, where for a couple of reasons, I think it's maybe good to leave it at that for now. So getting into what the options are, and defining it as 3 options. Of course, there are infinite options, or at least as much land as the district owns, but kind of focusing on 3 that have been in the main since 2017, and of course the one that was introduced late last year. But the community hall site, it's a place where the community currently does go for events and recreation programming. It has plenty of parking. There are residents who are near enough that they can walk to it. And as Tofino grows, there is opportunity for a library, if it were to be located on that site, to possibly grow also. On the other side of the coin, there are a few amenities nearby. So the library becomes a destination rather than what we often hope for with libraries today, that it's on your way to somewhere and causes people to want to drop in. That's not necessarily negative. It's just different. One of the VIRL, one of the criteria that we were given from council in 2016 was to look for a vibrant location. I think that this is the antithesis of a vibrant location. And we'd have to work around an existing community hall, as well as a community recreation facility that's been designed, and we've been trying to find funding for the last couple of years. The other challenge in terms of things that might be constructed or will be constructed there in the future is there are linear works for a wastewater treatment plant that will go through there, a force main to feed the wastewater treatment plant from this sector of the community, from the downtown sector of the community, as well as the outflow that will go into Duffin Passage. So, it can be challenging from a contract administration perspective to have 2 different contractors working on 2 different projects tripping over each other. So that's a challenge that would have to be addressed. The Katie Monk's Park site, I described that earlier. There is parking, but that can be challenging in summer months. The amenities nearby and the walk-by traffic and the more of a presence of a library in community is very strong here, and it's really what drew me to suggest this site last year. The proximity to the dock and to nearby communities that access Tofino via the dock, that's an important feature of this site, and this is near those places where people are often going when they do come into Tofino. As locations go, it is reasonably vibrant with the activity that's there now with the cafe and the bank, and we all go to the post office, our only mailbox in town, for better or for worse. I think that the significant negative on this one is from the comments that we received last year, there is very poor community acceptance of this, and that's the really challenging one with respect to this. And we could go back and forth and debate the merits and of the ecology and the age of trees on the site, but really we're hearing from the community quite strongly that those are things that concern them, and as well as that this was set up as a park, as Ms. Floody alluded to earlier, and should remain a park for the entire site is certainly what the feedback is that we've received. The idea that as was noted, the hours are limited at this point, and I think the plan of the IRL is that the hours would grow over time, but certainly there would be a significant number of hours during the week where it would be dark windows and would kind of not do its share of animating the street. And it would be challenging to try to maintain some trees here, and would require a very well thought out and considered design. Looking at the two Main Street sites, again, immediately behind the municipal office, yes, there are parking, but again, in the downtown area, we know that there are times of the year, a couple of months in the year, where there are challenges. But for much of the year, parking in downtown Tofino is underutilized. There are nearby views and a park. There is reasonable proximity to the First Street dock, and the communities that access Tofino by that dock. The site is already cleared, which is what VIRL has as a requirement, is a cleared site, and other destinations nearby, commercial destinations. And from from the feedback we received last year, as well as in 2016, 2017, this seems to be well supported by the community. The downside, loss of downtown parking, is a consideration for some. We can try to mode shift and get people to think more about being out of their vehicles and shift time of day when they're coming into downtown. So that's something that can potentially be managed somewhat. The high land value and the opportunity cost of this site is what had me last year wondering if there might be another place. To put a standalone library that's one story on a downtown site, I think does a bit of a disservice to downtown, but also thinking of what the best value that the community can get out of land that it purchased years ago. Having more than one use occurring just sort of makes sense. One of the challenges with construction, not quite as severe as our community hall site, is that the lift station that's currently kind of in the middle of Main Street is planned to be replaced and located on the corner of what I believe is I'm not sure which is which actually, but on a corner where we have the large generator now. So there is work that's planned for there, and again, that's something that has to be carefully managed. The other issue that, and Councillor McMaster as Council's representative on the IRL can speak to this, I'm sure, but we have a timing issue now, and we think that our moment is now or very soon, and what VIRL is looking for is a project that's made as easy for them as possible, and they are looking for any recipient community of a new library to provide the site and have servicing nearby. Yes, there are changes coming to VIRL. The future is less certain. Right now, we know what we're working with, and believe that we have a pretty good opportunity. So that certainly weighs into the recommendation that's before council, is to get firmly on a site and communicate that with the IRL. The staff report mentions the prototype library, and this is something that's being developed by the library board and staff some years ago, when they were looking at building libraries and the costs were coming in way beyond expectations. So this is, it's not a means of trying to win architectural awards. but rather a means of trying to have a better sense of costs and manage costs a little bit better. This type of library, I think I said, was intended for communities a little bit under 5,000 and smaller. And this is one that was built in Sayward. So the staff recommendation does include reference to the prototype library. And I'm just going to click through a few images. Same library. I think just before opening day. A 3D printer in that library. A small lounge space. So looking for some feedback and direction from council this afternoon, and then beginning to work with, or continuing to work, I guess, with VIRL to continue to take serious steps to get a new library established in Tofino. So staff recommendations are in front of you. One, that the site be identified, and it could be either of those two properties, depending on footprints and what we end up doing in terms of design. And the recommendation from staff also is that the prototype library be supported, but modified to meet our unique needs. So that concludes the staff presentation. And I will share here so that we can see each other, and I can put the recommendations back up if council needs them in a minute.
Thanks, Bob. Why don't we go around the table first for questions and comments, and I'll start with Councillor Chalmers.
Sure, thank you, Councillor McMaster. Bob, I did have a question for you, and sorry, I had meant to reach out earlier, so I apologize for this. But the rent that we pay to the Legion, I was just thinking of offsetting the cost of losing the paid parking for the downtown location. Do you offhand know if there's any significant?
Well, I believe VRL pays the rent to the Legion, so they would be
taking anyway.
It does. Yeah, it's an interesting thought, but yeah, the VRL would kind of take that rent money and put it into a building, I guess is the.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm definitely supportive of the Main Street. I was kind of between the community hall more and that one. And I think it makes more sense. I like it being more vibrant in downtown and not so remote. So I'm supportive of the two recommendations.
Councillor Steer.
Thank you, Acting Mayor McMaster. Yeah, I had a couple questions, Bob, in terms of the, I guess the big issue for me, I'm satisfied with this site location. My preference historically was the community hall for a whole bunch of other reasons. We won't need to go there now. But one of the questions in terms of the financing of the prototype, and I would have to agree with Ms. Floody about the, and yourself about the architectural awards probably would not rank in the top 527. That being said, what are the I guess what the cost share on design, or what is the budget that VIRL typically would have? Is it set with that prototype? Is there flexibility within that design? My basic question is, how do we go about maybe getting some improvements on that architectural design and some of the amenities that might be associated with the library?
I can answer that if you like, Bob.
Please.
Yeah, I would say that that design determines the budget, and any major deviations would be at somebody else's cost, i.e. ours, unless we have a benefactor. We would probably be allowed some minor changes, but the design will determine how much money is given to us towards the library. Anything to add, Bob?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what my conversations have been with VIRL staff is the budget is driven by what the prototype costs to build. So I think the staff report references If we wanted to do something more, then the cost of hiring an architect would be ours, as well as the incremental cost. So the cost above what it would take to deliver the prototype. That's not something that we have budgeted for this year. If council wanted to explore what's possible, potentially with, as was mentioned by Ms. Buddy earlier, the putting some additional space there, we could do that, but we would have to move, I would say, pretty quickly to figure out how we would pay for that.
Okay, I'll have to digest that for a minute, seeing that this is in committee of the whole, and we probably will have further discussion. I'd be curious as to, obviously, other councillors, and potentially, I guess at next council meeting, we will have a full council where this discussion may go in. In my understanding is right now, the significant factor is the location, securing that location for a VIRL. And there may be some time or maybe the ability to have further discussion around what design change may be possible and what those costs might look like potentially to the district. So I'll wait for now and listen to the rest of my council members before I chime in even more.
Thanks, Councillor Seah. Councillor Anderson.
Hi, thank you, Councillor McMaster. Yeah, I prefer the Main Street location. And given that we'll probably have to work with this prototype, I actually prefer it in from the corner a little bit. So of the two lots that are there, the one that's actually closer to the lift station is preferable, because this doesn't have much of a presence that would go on a corner site. It's I guess best face is where the front doors are. I would like to see us work with VIRL to improve the design. So that would mean the colors and possibly some sort of a overhang or facility like outside. Certainly we have some design guidelines that have encouraged overhangs over the sidewalk and outdoor space. And I'd like to see maybe something like that incorporated. I think it would go some ways to improving the design and also fitting in the community a little better. The library, I don't know, Tom probably remembers the old library, but the library we used to have was on that location that I prefer, and it also had a bit of a porch and deck going on. Quite well used. People would sit there and you could overlook the harbor, etc. Views changed a little bit since then, but those are my preferences. In terms of getting a better design, I sort of go back to that old saying that a camel is a horse that's designed by a committee. So how we get to that design, I think, would be to sort of gather some input from council, and then probably turn it over to a design professional. But in terms of adding extra space to the building, I don't really support that just right now. Maybe I could be convinced otherwise, but we do have, I think, underutilized space at the community hall right now. Maybe I'm wrong there, but there certainly is a spare room that we just built there that perhaps could be, I'd like to see fully utilized before we consider building more space. It may be an idea that we can approach in the future, but I think for now, just keeping it simple and to try keep this project on track. We've been well over 20 years, I think, overdue to have a library, as we've sort of gone around and around the question. So I'm anxious to get this built before somebody decides that libraries are obsolete. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. I'll add my 2 cents, and obviously I have a bit of knowledge from being on the library board and the executive of the library board. I think you've heard me say before, I think there is a risk that if we miss this opportunity, we may miss getting the library completely. Certainly in my lifetime, I know funds are short. There is a group within the Board of Trustees that would like to see no money spent on libraries in smaller communities. That was heavily defeated, and they came back at us with, they wanted a postponement of funds for 3 years being spent in smaller communities. Again, that was defeated, but there is that undercurrent there that groundswell may build as time goes on. Like everybody else, I'm not a fan of the prototype model. And I would say that if we were forced to go with that, I would probably favour putting it up at the community hall. I think most library users, avid library users, aren't really bothered what the library looks like. They're more bothered what's inside and what it looks like inside. However, we know what this community is like, and probably the loudest voices will be from people that never even use the library and will complain about what it actually looks like. So I think we've got to consider that. And we know what sort of uproar we had with the RCMP building, and we had no control over that. And at least here we have a little bit of control. I doubt, even if we approved the location at the next council meeting, I doubt whether this new library will happen just like that. I think tentatively it's scheduled for 2023. I doubt whether that's going to happen. I think funds are really tight with everybody. So I think there is time to talk to the library board. I know the size of the library, they say, is based on the population and also the catchment. But nobody seems to know what the formula is for taking into the catchment area. So they're looking into that, because we're not only servicing Tofino, we're servicing the First Nations communities, we're servicing the staff workers that are here. So we, instead of looking at a population of 2,400, we could be looking at 5,000 or more. So that may give us a chance to get a bigger library, or maybe the same size library with the amount of money that's spent on a bigger library to upgrade it so it looks nice. Yeah, I think that's basically it. So I was going to propose an amendment to Bob's recommendations, and I'll just read it to you and we can discuss it further. The first part remains the same, that the provision of 385 or 391 Main Street as a location for the Tofino branch of the Vancouver Island Regional Library be confirmed. And then I changed the second clause and said, and that the construction of a library be supported with modifications to meet district development permit requirements and to address Tofino's population, catchment and climate. Because I think we really want to stress how we're servicing so many people. At the moment, we're scheduled to get a library about the same size as Masset, I believe, just over 2,500 square feet. I think we are servicing a lot more people here than, say, Masset. So look for more comments from everybody, and if there's any discussion on that recommendation before I move it. Councillor Steer.
Thank you, Acting Mayor McMaster. I had a quick question, Duncan, or Councillor McMaster. If on that funding formula for a larger catchment population, does that significantly increase the funding that's available for the building? And have you seen or heard of, in your experience, the ability to be flexible with the potential of having that money being used to build potentially the same size library, but to have more of those amenities that we might be thinking are appropriate for our library?
I haven't heard of it. I would say that this is the first time it's been brought up by me, because they keep on stressing they want to capture more of the First Nations interest, and they stress how in their regulations they have to deal with catchment, but they've never actually dealt with it before. So that's why I say they're trying to find a formula. I believe there's a formula that takes the population and then some factor times the catchment area. And now they're doing some research as to where that formula is and if it actually does exist. But I think there is room for negotiation.
Okay, great, thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Chalmers.
Yeah, I like your amendment. I think it's worth exploring and seeing what we can get, and then going from there.
Okay. You noticed I took out the prototype model in the first clause, or the second clause, which just said construction of a library. So we're not saying we're going to go for a prototype. So I'll read it again and then see if we got a seconder. That the provision of 385 or 391 Main Street as a location for the Tofino branch at the Vancouver Island Regional Library be confirmed, and that the construction of a library be supported with modifications to meet district development permit requirements and to address Tofino's population, catchment and climate. We have a seconder. Councillor Steer. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favour? None opposed, motion is carried. Did you get that modification, Elise?
I did, thank you.
Okay. I just lost my agenda, hang on. Has anyone signed up for questions and answers?
No, no one has signed up.
Okay. I'll move from the chair that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to section 91C of the Community Charter to discuss matters relating to employee relations. Have a seconder? All those in favour? Okay, I propose